Now, after a fairly faultless week where they could do no wrong, it felt like a return to more familiar territory at the weekend with that 1-0 home defeat to Aston Villa. Steve, I'm going to start with you this week. Villa were there for the taking, weren't they? So drones and VAR aside, we'll get to that in a second. How frustrating was that game for you?
Yeah, it was annoying. As you say, they weren't great. I mean, they were decent in midfield, but other than that, at both ends of the pitch, they were shaky at the back and didn't look like they had an awful lot of threat up front. So obviously, we'd lose 1-0 from a uncontested set piece. Yeah, really annoying. Having, as you say, done a lot of good work in the previous 3 games to build up a little bit of confidence, and then all of a sudden that balloon has well and truly been popped ahead of that semi-final on Tuesday. So yeah, that could now go quite badly.
Yeah, it could. It does change things rather. Glen, a huge opportunity to get out of the bottom 3. Nathan Jones had talked about that before the game, and it just felt like we fluffed our lines a bit.
Yeah, we did. We blew it. It was disappointing for me from Nathan Jones is that I don't think he really attacked the game. I felt like we were very, very sort of, we were solid and we were hard to play through, and that's a good thing. But it seemed to be at the expense of our attacking play. I mean, we've talked in the last few weeks about James Ward-Prowse playing as a number 10, but that got kind of abandoned at half time, and he got sort of pulled back into the midfield, and that meant we were really lacking in creativity. And we just didn't seem to have much at all about us going forward. So I was disappointed with the substitutions because they seem to be substitutions to kind of hold what we have. I know there was a bit of an increase in energy, and ironically, the one sort of change that wasn't like for like was moving Walker Peters over to the right hand side. And when they did that against Everton, he set up a goal straight away, and he set up a goal yesterday as well, which ended up not being a goal, of course. So yeah, I was a bit disappointed. There were a number of players that I was kind of looking at thinking they work hard, but they've got so little quality on the ball. And I think we all know the ones I'm talking about. I can't be bothered to name them. And we've got 2 new guys who who are supposed to add a bit more quality and a bit more attacking threat to the team. We've got an Argentinian who runs from midfield and scores goals, and we've got a left winger who's known for scoring goals, and they don't get on the pitch. So I found it all a bit disappointing, and the whole thing from the players and the manager, and yeah, it just felt like a bit of a wasted afternoon, bit of a wasted opportunity.
What was your take on the game yesterday, Jacob? It seemed to me like the old problems still troubling us. For a week, we thought, do you know what, things might have turned a corner, we might be pushing on now, and then all of a sudden you're straight back down to where you were.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me that's probably the most deflating defeat of the season, because in other games you could say, oh, Southampton were just really outplayed, they were really quite poor. This was one where I just thought it's such a good window of opportunity. I thought Southampton could really win that game. Villa were, they had no cutting edge really. Leon Bailey made some good runs, but his finishing was woeful. I just looked at that first half and I thought, you can really go and press Villa a little bit more. Martinez, as good as he is a goalkeeper, I don't think he's great with his feet. Tyrone Mings as well. And I just felt like Southampton was sat in that mid block where they weren't really sat back, but they weren't really pressing either. And when they did press, you got the crowd up and everything just seemed a little bit better. And I just felt with especially that team as well, with the Doos on the right, he took Elyounoussi away from that team, who's probably better defensively. I thought they'd really give it a go. It was just a bit of a shame that he set up in, it seemed like a mid-block, and with Adam Armstrong coming off the left, that they just tried to counter because of Villa's high fullbacks. They're so high because they provide the width. He thought maybe Adam Armstrong could be good on the counter, but it just seems to me like it was another game and another, some more points, slipping through the fingers, because one of the reasons why Nathan Jones came in was because there was such a favourable run of games coming up, and he's had 6 games now, and he's won 1 game, and that was against Everton, who are pretty terrible at the moment, aren't they? So it's another game against a potential middling to lower Premier League team, and they can't even get a point as well because of the fundamentals of defensively. And as good as Lianco and Salisi may have been, they keep continuing to fall asleep, don't they, from set plays?
Yeah, I'm worried, really worried, and I know we'll get onto that in just a minute. Steve, I want to talk about, Glenn touched on there, the squad was crying out for new additions. We get 2 new faces in, and then neither of them start. Does that seem a bit strange to you?
Yeah, I mean, especially given that they've obviously both had the best part of a week and a half training with the new teammates and stuff now. I mean, like the previous games, it made sense that they wouldn't. You don't throw them straight into the starting lineup when they've had like one training session, because you don't have any sort of coherence or knowledge of sort of how that individual is going to sort of fit into the unit. But now that you've had like an entire week of build up to this game, and those players have kind of slotted in, surely you give them an opportunity. That's why you bought them, because they are better. Theoretically, they are better than what we already have. And if they're better than what we already have, then they are in our best 11 players, and therefore they should be starting games more often than not. Especially in a game where against, as you say, opposition who are there for the taking. And if they're, I mean, Villa, if they're coming up against players that they don't really know an awful lot about, so therefore they've not got a wealth of sort of scouting knowledge on these players, all of a sudden we're the ones that are able to spring a surprise. Whereas because they know that Ward-Prowse has been playing in that number 10 role the last few games and it's worked quite well, Unai Emery's no mug. He was able to set up a system in that Villa midfield which completely negated him. So we lost the sort of surprise factor in that as well. And yeah, it just felt like such a missed opportunity on so many levels, that didn't get the opportunity to get these new players into the team. Kind of the first decent opportunity, because I don't think you necessarily throw them in for a cup semi-final. So then you're probably then having to wait for the Blackpool game next week. Suddenly pressure's on a little bit for that game, because if you get dumped out by lower opposition, then all of a sudden the mood changes somewhat. Everybody had kind of built a little bit more confidence after the previous set of results, and I mean, I think you can kind of take one game like this in isolation off the back of that run and say, wow, it just didn't happen. At the end of the day, we're not good enough to play well every game. But you then go and lose a game like that one next week, and all of a sudden then the situation turns sort of dramatically again. I mean, we'll see on that front, but yeah, as I say, missed opportunity. Should have probably got those two guys into the team a little bit earlier.
A couple of things to talk about involved in the game itself. Glenn, did you see the drone? Did you have did you have your binoculars with you? Because that was surely the most bizarre thing ever to happen at a football game, when they called them over and said, we're going off because there's a drone.
It was more or less directly above my head, because I was was it
you? Was it Glen Cam?
No, afraid not. Is it actually a criminal offence to fly a drone over a football ground? Because if not, it should be.
It was interesting that they said it was player security, but at the same time, that they're worried about the rights, aren't you? And someone with a camera on there streaming it. And
yeah, but I mean, if it drops out the sky, then
I mean, those are pretty heavy to drop on your head.
Yeah.
But it happened. There was a game called off, wasn't there? A couple of was it last season? Brentford Wolves was delayed by about an hour because of the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's certainly precedent for it, and
I mean,
it did seem as if the ref identified it pretty quickly and dealt with it quickly.
Yeah, ref got that one right. Well done, ref.
We could have done without that the break in play though. I did for a while think, how long is this going to last? How long till they track down of said drone or shoot it out of the sky or whatever? We could be here for a while.
It was about 42.
I thought the break helped us.
Yeah, it was about 42 minutes, wasn't it? That the drone was spotted, and then we came back on for it was about 6 minutes in the end, wasn't it? And it was something and nothing really. It was actually the only interesting thing that happened in the first half, because there was absolutely nothing. For me, the team, like Villa had a load of possession but did absolutely nothing with it, and Saints just couldn't get anything going up the park. So it was an interesting interlude. It's the first time I've ever seen that since I've been going. You didn't get many of those in the 1980s. So
it's a new problem, isn't it?
Yeah. But I mean, on a serious point, I if it's not a criminal offence, I think it should be.
Yeah. Jacob, let's talk about a couple of the times we had the ball in the net. The first, I think, both players offside for that first one when Kyle Walker-Peters just held the ball over, and I think he will probably be more relieved than anyone that Che Adams was offside.
Yeah, my first thought was I thought Che Adams was on, and he just completely fluffed it. He was going in, and then Walker-Peters I thought was the one that was offside, and he was the one that made sure it was going in. And if that was the case, then it probably sum up Southampton's finishing and season, really, wouldn't it? But yeah, I think that's really how Nathan Jones views first half of games. He's a back to front coach. He ensures the fundamentals are correct, and then once those are correct, then he'll start adding layers. And that first half, I thought they were quite good defensively, and all they needed was that one chance, another great whipped in ball from Lianco, similar to the Mara goal, wasn't it, against City? And Che Adams scores that, and he's on side to start off with. Then go into the break 1-0, and Nathan Jones's job and his outlook is probably vindicated, isn't it? But Southampton probably haven't got that clinical edge to take that type of approach to games. But yeah, I do feel like Southampton are set up not to concede rather than go on the front foot and to really impose themselves. But they did get the ball in the back of the net twice, and I'm a journalist, so I have to remain impartial, but I did feel that was extremely soft, that James Ward-Prowse goal, and I think you should have always gone with umpire's call if there is one in football.
Let's get the views of Steve and Glenn on this one. The second goal, clear and obvious, obviously came up a lot yesterday. So I think Elyounoussi deemed to have nudged Ramsey in the back or maybe trod on his heel. What was your take on it, Steve? How did you see it?
Well, I mean, I think if the ref gives the free kick in real time, I don't think anybody has any particular issue with it. I mean, I don't think there's really any contact sort of in terms of the shove. I think he's just sort of, his arm just happens to be there. I don't think there's any contact there. It's the treading on the ankle bit that they've pulled it up for. But is it? I mean, the referee's looking right at it. You can see on the replay that's basically where the ball goes. So he's looking directly at that passage of play. He's not seen it from the angle that he's got, which is basically identical to the one that the camera that he then watches back on the video. So he's got the view of him missing it. And yeah, I mean, it was just soft, but like the whole point of like we say with offside, it's a binary thing. You're offside or you're not, for the most part. And I think while people whinge about the sort of margins and stuff, I think ultimately you've got to draw a line somewhere. So you might as well draw the line right next to the last defender. But for fouls, it is ultimately subjective. But the whole point this season was they'd made this big song and dance about it at the start of the season that the bar for clear and obvious overturns and stuff is going to be raised significantly. And that was reinforced 2 months ago when Howard Webb was appointed as the chief refereeing officer. It's like, I mean, just chief officer, because that's all they do, isn't it? They're referees. And yet suddenly the bar is now right on the ground again. It is literally, I've spotted something really, really pernickety and tiny. I'm going to make you go to the screen. As soon as he's gone to the screen, it's getting overturned. I think we had 3 or 4 seasons with VAR now, and I think I saw a stat recently. There's been 3 instances where referees have gone to the monitor and not given a decision based on it.
Yeah, there's that, you know in the ground, don't you, when that happens?
Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah.
And it was just nonsense. People then see it back on the big screen, and you're looking at it and just thinking, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like they're being sort of instructed or requested, or however you want to sort of detail them, the way they're being managed, to look at these and only interfere when they've made when the referee has obviously made a massive cock up. And he just hasn't here. He's missed a minor detail, which is quite surprising given how the 19 free kicks he awarded Villa during the game, when we basically went and breathed on someone and the Villa player went to the ground. He was absolutely fine giving those. He didn't see anything going on there. So it can't have been anything major. And yet here we are with that goal disallowed. And I mean, you do see it often, don't you, where a team's had a goal disallowed, chalked off by VAR, where they've obviously celebrated and everyone thinks they've scored. And suddenly you just get the sort of mental aspect of sort of recovering from that knockback. We never really quite got a grip of the game after that, really, apart from I think Gineppo had forced a save from Martinez late on. So yeah, you get the sort of double whammy effect of you've not scored, and then following that you're kind of a bit more slopey shouldered, aren't you, in your mannerisms for the next few minutes, and it cost us.
And Glenn, Michael Salisbury was described by the boss yesterday as being pedantic. Is that a word you use, or are there others that spring to mind? What's the headline on the blog going to be?
It's got pedantic is far too many syllables for me to use. I think he got intimidated. I do think he got intimidated by basically the whole Villa team, apart from Jacob Ramsey.
Is that where we're not good enough? Do we need to be better at stuff like that?
Well, because 10 of our players, or 9 of our players were off celebrating. Bianco got involved with the referee, as you'd expect.
Yeah.
But basically, every Villa player, apart from Jacob Ramsey, who was still pretending to be injured, were in the referee's face. So I reckon the referee was thinking, okay, they're going to be they're really angry. And Southampton are all off in the corner and we don't really care. If that had been the other way around, we wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have had 10 players in the referee's face. And he's gone off and he's seen it. I've seen it reported as a stamp on his Achilles. No, he barely touched his heel. And Jacob Ramsey's interview on Match of the Day brought up one of my old bugbears where we basically said there was a little, he actually said, I don't know whether it was enough to go down, but I thought it was, so I went down. And it's like, I mean, for me, if someone fouls you and they put you on the ground, it's a foul. If you put yourself on the ground, it's a dive.
Yeah.
And just feeding into Steve's point, really, I don't see how you can, as a professional referee who's supposed to know about football, can watch that on the TV and say, yeah, I've got that horrendously wrong, I'm going to overturn it. But then you watch Match of the Day and the goons in the studio, Danny Murphy and Jermaine Genius are not really experts. They said the same thing. They just straight away, they didn't even explore the clear and obvious debate. They just went, he's fouled him.
Yeah. There's a few comments about if it was the other way around, it's not a penalty, is it? That's the other way of looking at it. There's no way that goes the other way for sure. Jacob, I just want to touch on the forward players again before we move on, because that's another game where the front three have failed to score, next to no attacking threat at all. I think Raoul points out, he's watching on YouTube tonight, says the worrying part was when James Ward-Prowse was suffocated, we'll just clear out of ideas. And if other teams are going to, having watched him playing that number 10 role, notice how good he is, and then put a man on him, mark him out of the game, that's going to be a problem going forward. And again, we're talking about those missed chances.
Exactly. I think one of the downsides of playing Ward-Prowse in that number 10 role is that a lot of the attacks or a lot of things that happen in the final third are funneled towards him. He has got a lot of influence in there, where if he was a little bit deeper, he'd be the one playing that pass into that final third. But, if we look at what Southampton are doing in the window as well, where they're potentially not going to sign an out-and-out number 9 because they want players, that can supplement all forward positions and they can all get goals from different areas. Southampton aren't really getting that at the moment. They're just getting Ward-Prowse or nothing, aren't they? So, you haven't got Adam Armstrong chipping in with 5 goals. Che Adams getting that double figures. Miss Fawcett, she's not getting a chance yet. I'm sure he will. You've even got Musa Gineppo getting some goals. So I do think there's such a burden on Ward-Prowse. And if Southampton are going to go down that line in the next week or 10 days about, bringing in a forward who can play in multiple positions across the front line, they've really got to make sure that everyone, apart from Ward-Prowse, chips in with goals. And right now, that's not happening, is it?
But it's not going to either. You know that Adam Armstrong is not going to score 5 goals between now and the end of the season. You know that he's one that has zero quality on the ball. Works hard, got no issue with that, with his work rate, and he's carrying out the manager's instructions. But when he gets the ball, it's completely random. Is it going to go to one of our players? Probably not. Your point about moving Ward-Prowse from midfield, that's highlighted by then. Okay, so Ward-Prowse isn't getting involved in the build-up play. You're now relying on Diallo to pass the ball to a red and white shirt, which he frequently failed to do yesterday. And I just go back to the earlier point about the frustration of we've got a goal scorer who we've signed, or we don't know if he's a goal scorer yet in the Premier League. He's sat on the bench. We've got a midfield player who's supposed to have some quality about him, not playing. And for me, when those are the two players that should have come on 60 minutes, not who came on, Elyounoussi and Mara.
Mara came on in a row, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And, Mara and Elyounoussi, Mara tried, but nothing there. Elyounoussi wasn't it? It was a downgrade. You've taken Lavia. I know Lavia wasn't having the best of games, but you've taken Lavia off, put Elyounoussi on. You've taken Adams off. Adams had a terrible game as well. He was another one. He worked hard and held the ball up, but where the pass went was all a bit random. So
Elyounoussi is a curious case, and I think he's probably a little bit indicative of the fan base because he does split opinion, doesn't he? But Nathan Jones is a huge fan of him. I know he didn't start him yesterday, but there's been reasons for that in terms of injury and managing conditioning levels. But the reason why Jones likes him is because of his defensive output. He's reliable. They trust him to play a number of positions. But if you're losing or if you're drawing, he's the guy that's going to make the difference at the moment. And I don't think he's got that bit of zip or bit of energy. A lot of people do like him. I think I see his qualities, but I don't think he's got that telling touch in that final third. Where Orsic, if you look at his stats, I know Premier League's completely different to Croatia. He takes a lot of shots, he crosses the ball a lot, and he has got that incision about him. So I think Orsic is someone that perhaps should have come on, but of course it's going to take a number of weeks. Jones thinks, and that's not really what you want from us January signing.
And is that because
we're going to be down by then?
We will be down by then, absolutely. And is that, Jacob, because of all the different formations? I know that we've talked about this over the past couple of weeks, and when you spoke to him, he doesn't want to play one formation. He doesn't want to be famous for one formation. He changed it again quite a few times during the week, and I know you wrote about this as well. When these new players are coming in, is it that, and I don't like the word onboarding, but have they got to load them with all the information about all the different formations and all the changes during the game? Is that, do you think, is what's stopping them just dropping straight in and hitting the ground running?
I think it depends on the position you play. Like, for example, Alcaraz literally got off the plane and played half an hour against Everton because he could basically fitted the system quite well. He's a number 8. He could get into the box. Where Orsic, he came from Croatia and he was playing in a very set position on that left-hand side. Where if you see Southampton, you see a doozy in that first half against Everton, for example. He was really wide on the left, and then Jones comes to him and tells him to play in a number 10 role. And all of a sudden, it's completely different in where you're receiving the ball. It would sometimes be wide on the left with everything ahead of you. And then all of a sudden, you move into the middle of the pitch. It'll basically be in a centre midfield with all pressure around you. So I don't know if Orsic has got those qualities yet to keep interchanging between a wide winger and a number 10. And that's the reason why Jones wants him to keep training him, because he needs a winger that recognises the triggers in terms of when to change system. And for him, he doesn't think Orsic does at the moment, but Elyounoussi does all the time. He knows everything. He can play right wing back, he can play number 10, he can play holding midfield. And that's the reason why he ultimately brings him on instead of him.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room. You don't get relegated because of poor refereeing or VAR decisions. We're 15 points from 20 games. Steve, 1 clean sheet in 20, and we were lucky to get that if you listen to Nathan Jones. So this is going to be the problem, isn't it? Well, it feels to me very much like we're running out of games already.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we're in the middle of this run that was theoretically good on paper. But of course, the game's not played on paper; it's played on grass and or in the sky. If you're Nathan Jones playing Nottingham Forest, but it's we're as you say, running out of time, and ultimately you need something that people can kind of grip onto as saying, right, this is the reason why we've got a chance here. And yet you kind of look at yesterday's game as a kind of prime example as to why we don't have those things. Because for all that, as I said earlier, that we looked kind of more solid as a unit and that Villa didn't really cause an awful lot of issue for us in open play, despite 70-something% possession. Let's be honest, they did nothing with it. We still lost 1-0. We still didn't make their keeper work hard enough. I mean, he was worked harder than our keeper was, to be fair. But at the end of the day, we've still lost 1-0. And we've not given our centre forwards enough service. We've not put the balls in the right areas. And we've not had enough players kind of busting a gut to get into the box onto anything that we might speculatively put into the area. So, yeah, there's not a whole lot of reasons to kind of hang your hat on us at the moment. And realistically, I think even just from a basic PR perspective, if the club was looking like it accepted that this was a problem and was working its nuts off to try and remedy it with one or two signings in the very most obvious position that we need strengthening, then I think people would kind of accept that, okay, fine, it's happening. We have our position in the food chain as far as transfers go. We might have to wait till deadline day to see what other pieces fall into place at bigger clubs. See who's available short term or maybe discarded because a bigger club has signed somebody better. But at the moment, there's no noises coming out of the club that hint at that. There seems to be, like, Nathan Jones seems to be making noises that he's perfectly happy with the attacking options we've got. It's like, I mean, we're not. Yeah, I mean, we're not staying up drawing games 0-0. That's for sure.
No, and to be fair, Steve's normally the more optimistic of the group. So, Glenn, there's a lot of people that are doing the maths and crunching the numbers. And if we're going to say, we want to get to 40 points, I know we haven't previously the last couple of years, and it's been all right. 18 games left. It's something like 1.3888 recurring points per game that we need to get. And you look at that run. We'll talk about the cup in a second, but you look at Brentford, Wolves, Chelsea, Leeds, Leicester. I can honestly see that we'll be sat here on a Sunday night talking about a narrow 1-0 defeat to Brentford and to Wolves and to Chelsea. Have you seen anything to suggest that we're going to get that 1.3888 points per game?
Not exactly. No. Well, we won 3 games in a row last week, so we have got it in us to win games. But yesterday felt like we emerged from the slime. Those 3 games felt like we emerged from the slime for a little bit, and yesterday just felt like we crawled right back into it again. We are still bottom of the league. I mean, I wouldn't say optimistic, but I was, having won those 3 games and put in sort of decent performances, at least in part in all 3 of those games. I thought if the performance levels can continue in, going in that direction, then we'll win some, we'll lose some, but there's a good chance that, we'll have enough to get out of it. But yesterday really, really sort of like took the wind out of the sails again. And I think you just look at some of the players we've got and just think, we're not going to get enough out of you. And the bottom line is we haven't got enough goals in the team. We are trying to win games 1-0. But you've got to have a backup plan when you go 1-0 down, haven't you? And we just do not seem to have it. And the players, I mean, our top goal scorer in the league is Che with 4, is it?
Yes.
Maybe Prowse's got more than that now.
Ward-Prowse, yeah.
Yeah, but we're relying on a midfield player, over-relying on a midfield player to score the goals. We've got players who are in there as attackers, and they just haven't got it. But we've gone into this season with a strike force of Che Adams, Adam Armstrong, and Sekou Mara. That's 2 championship strikers and a kid from the French league. It goes back to that season under Claude Puel when we had Charlie Austin, Shane Long, and an injured Joe Rodriguez, and we struggled like mad until we signed Gabbiadini in January, and he had a little burst of goals, and we managed to stay up off the back of it, basically. So, for Nathan Jones to say he's happy with his attacking options, either he's lying just to throw people off the scent, or he's deluded. Because
he's been told to say that, maybe.
Yeah, we are. There is not enough goals in this team to stay up as it is, and maybe Orsic and Alcaraz can help that, but I doubt even they will contribute enough to get us out of it. They have to get someone or find a way of playing that, where more players get themselves into positions where they might score, because I'm just not seeing it at the moment. And it will only I mean, at the moment, you look at the league table and it doesn't actually look like a lost cause at all, because
it's 3 points, isn't it, separating the bottom 7 teams at the moment?
Yeah.
So.
But we won our 3 games, but only one of them was in the league, unfortunately. So if we can string together a little run of 3 games in the league, then it would suddenly look much better. And then you play the bigger teams later on, and it's not so desperate, and you can maybe afford to get beaten by Manchester City. But if you get into if you get to the stage where you're playing a Man City, a Liverpool, or a Tottenham, and someone like that, and you're feeling like you have to get a result out of it, then you are really struggling.
Looking at the positives, Chris points out we deserved a point yesterday, and that would have taken us off the bottom. So thanks, Chris. And Pete says it was much better than the Forest game. So let's
It's the lowest of low bars ever.
It's a positive point. So thanks for that, Peter.